What goes into making a good deck? Deck making is a vital skill required by any good duelist. It requires both a good foundational knowledge about the cards that exist, and an instinctive feel for card interactions that might be slightly beyond the abilities of the average player. As an avid and proliferous deck maker, I want to share with you the basic concepts that I want to codify in order to maximize your deck making potential. Possibly the most important concept that I must convey is to trust no one. You are the ultimate decider in what your deck should have. Take the opinions and deck list of others as a resource, not as an end-all final opinion of what you should do. Even my own opinions are just that, opinions. Use this as an opportunity to learn. Take my advice, build on it, learn for yourself why I have said and done what I did. Very well, what is a deck? A deck must consist of 40 cards, sleeved and shuffled. Everything else is optional, but the 40 cards is vital. This core concept, a 40-card deck, is the first foundational block from which we will build. Having more than 40 cards is sometimes necessary for various reasons, but every card you go over 40 is one more card that lowers your chances of drawing what you need. Deck thinning, an important concept for increasing the likelihood of drawing what you will need, will be covered in a future installment. To prevent yourself from drawing a brick hand, we must start with a good ratio of cards. Your opening hand can often dictate how well you do the rest of the game, so getting a good hand is important. First, make sure you have roughly even numbers of monsters and spells and traps. 20 monsters and 20 spells and traps is a good start. Next, we must make sure the monsters you pick are monsters you can summon. Boss monsters, which are difficult to summon or require tribute, should comprise around 5 to 10 of your 20 monsters, at most. The ratio between spells and traps can vary. To avoid your opponent from locking you out of using all non-monster cards through unusual combinations of floodgate cards, it is a good idea to include both. I generally use around 12 spells and 8 traps. The reason for the higher proportion of spells has more to do with the high utility and sheer power of Mystical Space Typhoon more than with spells being generally better. Let's go over the ratios of cards one more time. First, you will have roughly 20 monsters and 20 spells and traps. Of your 20 monsters, no more than half of them should be difficult to summon or require tributes. And you should play both spells and traps. Among them, playing a slightly higher ratio of spells will keep you safe from being locked down by cards that negate traps. Your deck, in order to run well, must have a tightly controlled idea, concept, or archetype to revolve around. Decks made of completely unrelated, non-archetype cards have run in the past, but they all had a core concept they orbited, which gave them everything they needed to go so far as to win a national championship series, like Synchro Cat or Hat decks. Once you have your idea, you must introduce an engine. It could be that you picked an archetype that already has an engine, which is great. However, the in-archetype engine that was designed for it will rarely ever be sufficient. In order to overcome deficiencies, we must pick a second engine. An engine is any group of cards, effects, or interactions that when activated, give you some kind of advantage. That advantage could take the form of allowing you to draw more cards, summon monsters easily, or thin your deck. In every case, the engines allow your decks to run more quickly, consistently, and usually more aggressively. When investing in cards, don't buy big expensive cards that have only one usage and can be used outside of the deck it's meant for. Buy cards that are part of an engine. For example, the Artifact engine, the Lightsworn engine, the Blue Eyes Cards of Constance engine, and many more. There are too many lists, and no easy way of finding that could fit your needs. Future installments will cover in detail many of the engines available to the player. Many decks that are really good, and almost competition-worthy, have a good idea and a good engine. What holds them back from being competitive is often the lack of control. Control refers to the concept of being able to disrupt your opponent's plays. This can take many forms, and is often difficult to introduce cards into your deck that limit your opponent's plays without disrupting your own ability to play. That is why essentially all decks that have ever won a major tournament have some inherent element of control through its existing archetype. There are a few cards we introduce into our lineup that add some elements of control and are generally considered staples. For example, Solemn Warning is a welcome addition to any deck. The last important thing that decks have is the ability to swarm. Swarming is the ability of putting multiple resources on the field at once in order to force a win from your opponent before he has a chance to recover. If your opponent drew badly and only placed 1 or 2 easily destroyed cards in the field, you must take advantage and try to reduce their life points as much as possible. The ability to punish your opponent in their moment of weakness is vital to winning difficult duels. Finally, in order to keep yourself from losing in the mid to late game when both players have nearly exhausted their resources, your cards must have some element of grind. Similar to your engine, the ability to grind is the continuing generation of resources, turn after turn. This is also difficult to add to your deck with outside cards and must be part of your initial idea or archetype in order to work well. Let's recap. Your deck must have a solid core idea, concept, or archetype. In order to have any hope of being competitive, your initial core must have some element of control, the ability to limit your opponent's plays. In addition, you must have the ability to grind. That is to say, you must be capable of consistently generating resources through summoning monsters, drawing cards, or destroying your opponent's cards. Punishing your opponent in their moment of weakness and drastically reducing your opponent's life points in a single turn is necessary to win difficult duels. The ability to swarm the field with many monsters is important for any great deck. If your core can control, swarm, and grind, you are essentially guaranteed to have a consistent deck. An engine is vital to your deck. It could take many forms, but it generally allows you to draw cards, summon monsters, or limit your opponent's play more consistently. If you invest money into cards, this is where you want to invest the most in. Your deck could have an engine built into the archetype of cards that you choose as the core of your deck, but it's advisable to select a second engine if your first engine has deficiencies. There is much more to deck building, but these are the bare basics that we need to know. Build a deck with roughly even ratios so you don't draw a useless opening hand, stick to a deck core concept, and include an engine to shore up the weaknesses for your core concept. Keep an eye out for future episodes on deck building, improving as a player, and much more.
Become a patron and support us today. If you like what you saw, like and subscribe below. Follow us on social media. Thank you. Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck Spotlight. Spotlight. Oh. Wait, MySpace still exists?
Copyright Yugioh Senpais. All rights reserved. Contact us for sponsorship and advertisement opportunities.